So the other day when I got the phone call from Shawn, it's funny because when I heard he was going and we were house sitting and I heard this storm was coming, I said, Shawn's not going to make it back because this is the second time he's gone to California and there's been a storm and I've had to punt. But as soon as he said, do you want to do the talk? And I said yes, because that's what we do when we're asked. We say yes, especially when it's a dream. So he said, whatever you need, call me if you need. Okay, fine. So then, that was Thursday. And, I called up Gloria, I think. I called a bunch of people, in tears, and no one answered. So I know when that happens that, okay, I'm just supposed to go to God with this, and be okay with it. And then everyone called me back, right? So that was very cool. But Gloria sends me an email. No pressure, but what's the name of your talk? And I was like, oh my God. And it kind of just came right to me. Conversations from the Heart. So I sent that back to her with the quote. Okay, that got through that. And then I worked all day Saturday, so I couldn't work on my talk at all. But I got to work on it all day on Friday. And I think I emailed Kenneth at one point and I said, Kenneth, can you do the God vibration for me? He says, of course. I said, great. Because I'm on, actually he emailed me or texted me and said, I hear a little birdie tells me you're going to be doing the talk. I'm like, yeah, can you do the God vibration? He said, yeah. I said, great, because I'm on platform and I'm doing Inquire and I'm board member on duty. And he's like, and I'm like, as I'm writing it to him, I'm like, oh my God. So he says, I could do platform for you. I'm like, oh, thank you. And then Bob reached out and says, I'll do board member on duty. So my reason for this is I'm so blessed to be surrounded by so much support and so much love. And I'm just grateful to be here. So my talk today is on Conversations from the Heart. And the meditation that I did is it's actually something called a freeze frame. And it comes from the Heart Math Institute. And what it is, first of all, our heart has an intelligence of its own. Our heart is actually older than our brain. When we're in our mom's belly, our heart actually gets made before our brain does. Mm-hmm. And that particular meditation really helps us to come from our head and live in our heart space. And the reason for that is, we want to come from that place. Matters of the heart. Matters of the heart include gratitude and bliss and fun and joy and laughter, forgiveness, compassion. Those are all the things that come from our heart. That information. Our brain is really important. Our brain is great for strategy and planning and logic and intellect, content, all that stuff. But also our brain is in charge of anger and sadness. And sadness is in the heart also, but it's from what we think about. So when we do this freeze frame, it's called heart coherence. We're actually bringing our heart and our mind in coherence with one another. And all kinds of things happen in our body. Our endorphins are released. We get a calming sensation. And when we're angry or any of the other emotions that come from the head, we have this spiking that goes on in our body. Whereas when we bring our heart and our mind together, our waves go like this. And it's actually even, if you have a pet and you're sitting in the room all by yourself and your pet comes in, you and your pet, believe it or not, go in coherence with one another, with your heart and your mind, because of the love that's felt. I don't know if it necessarily happens with our spouses. I guess it depends on whether or not we're having an argument or not. But our pets, we don't really have arguments with. So our heart goes into coherence with our pets. So that's why it's really important to come from that place in our heart. And so this particular technique, it creates a coherence, and our heart rate lowers and it secretes that calming influence. So again, I'll just briefly say it's really about focusing on our breath, imagining our breath coming in and going out of our heart. Do that for a few breaths, and then think of something that you're grateful for. And that creates an energy around you. So that's, if you're ever getting yourself into that place of anger or whatever, or sadness, or you want to bring your heart in, that's what you have to do. So, but before we get into conversations from the heart, we also have communication from the heart. And communication from the heart is something as simple as when we're walking down the street and someone's walking towards us, we look them in the eye. That's a blessing. It's truly a blessing to look people in the eye. They are blessed by you and you're blessed by them. And it opens up, it creates a little energy within us. And if you smile, wow, our bodies really do a lot with that energy. Another kind of communication from the heart is prayer, right? We don't actually talk to somebody, but when we're in prayer, we're actually communicating from our heart. And there's another really cool thing that we can do. There's a study around when you hug somebody. Generally, when we hug people, I hug someone, I raise my right hand and comment that way. But if I raise my left hand, my heart will come up against their heart. And that creates an energy between two people, and all kinds of chemicals go off in our bodies. That's very different than when we hug the other way. So if you want to create that energy with somebody else when you're hugging them, try to remember to hug, like bringing your heart together, heart to heart. Mm-hmm. So now conversations. So the first kind of conversation we have is small talk, right? When we're sitting chatting with our friends, it's just small talk and it's fun or whatever. But have you ever had small talk, consciously aware of having your heart opened? When you're just sitting there hanging out, talking with them, being 100% present. It's very different than when you're just chatting and not conscious of it. So it's just an idea, something to practice, because what we practice grows, right? Whatever we practice. If you're practicing joy, you're going to grow joy. If you're practicing gratitude, you're going to grow gratitude in your life. If you're practicing anger, you're going to get really good at being angry. If you practice criticism, you're going to get really good at being critical. So why not practice joy? Why not practice happiness, peace, compassion? It's just as easy. It just makes you feel better. So practicing and being 100% there with people, your friends or whoever. Sometimes when I'm sitting talking with friends and I'm eating, I'm focusing more on what I'm eating than what they're saying, you know, and that's really not really being a good friend, but that's the truth. So it's really about being conscious of being with somebody, because we feel that. Has anybody ever been in a conversation where you know the person's checked out? Yep. Oh, yeah. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone that you know that they're right there with you? Yes. Is it different? Yeah. Absolutely. So it's one of those times you can practice, and I'm getting to why you want to practice it. There's another kind of conversation that we can have, and those are the conversations that we have when, you know, we're not necessarily feeling good about ourselves and we want to feel better about ourselves. So we start talking about other people. And there's a man named Socrates. Anybody ever heard of Socrates? Yeah. So he's a very wise man. He was walking down the street one day, and an acquaintance came up to him and said, Socrates, I have to tell you something about one of your students I saw. And Socrates says to him, okay, well, you have to take a test, the test of 3. And the guy's like, really? What's the test of 3? He says, well, the first test is, what you're about to tell me, is it true? And the guy's like, well, I don't know if it's true. I just heard it. And Socrates says, well, okay, so you're going to tell me something, but you don't even know if it's true. Well, let's go to the next test. Is what you're going to tell me kind or good about this person? And the guys go, no. As a matter of fact, to the contrary, it's not. So Socrates is like, wow, so you're going to tell me something about somebody, one of my students, that you don't know if it's true and that it's not good. He said, well, let's go to the third test. He said, maybe you'll pass the third test. He says, is what you're about to tell me going to be useful to me? And the guy says, no, probably not. He says, so let me get this right. You're about to tell me something that's not true, that's not good, and that's not useful. He said, you know, I really don't want to hear it. And I tell that story because what a loving way to have a communication about something you don't want to hear, something you don't want to engage in. So when I read that story, I just thought, wow, what a great way. Not shaming, not blaming, not making the guy feel bad, but, you know, I don't think I want to have that conversation. And now, so that's it's a little harder maybe to practice coming from your heart in that conversation. And now the last kind of conversation, they're called crucial conversations. And this is where it's really, really important to practice coming from your heart. And crucial conversations are conversations that we're having when there are opposing opinions, the stakes are high, or emotions are going to get pretty riled up. Most of the time, I have to say for myself, I don't handle these conversations so well. I try to avoid them, or I get emotional. But there's actually, the class that I'm taking right now is called Crucial Conversations, and these are the 2 books that we use, and it was amazing. This is called nonviolent communication and crucial conversations. It is amazing how you can actually have these conversations and stay in the present moment and come from your heart and actually get win-win resolutions. There are 8 principles to have these kind of conversations. I'm only going to talk about 3 of them. So the first principle is you want to get unstuck. And the skill to get unstuck is to have the knowledge of how to spot these conversations that I'm in that are keeping me stuck. And the way to do that, the way to spot those conversations is through prayer and meditation. Go into prayer and say, okay, Spirit, what conversations am I having that are keeping me stuck, so that I know that I have to use this technique to get out of them. The second principle is to start with your heart. And this skill is how to stay focused on what you really want. What is your heart's desire? And sometimes we think our heart's desire is to get somebody to do what we want them to do, or we want them to think the way we're thinking, or we want a new car and we can't afford it, so we're trying to bargain with somebody. But when we go into our heart, a lot of times it's something very different. It's fulfillment, it's peace, it's love, it's bliss. So the spiritual practice to find that out is to be in love in action, to come to those conversations in that place of love. And I'm going to tell you how to do that in the next part. But the third principle that we're going to touch upon is master your story. The skill is how to stay in dialogue when you're angry, scared, or hurt. See, because what happens is our story is what triggers that anger, that fear, and that hurt. It's the thoughts that we have. It's the history that we bring to the conversation. And by the way, the person we're having this crucial conversation with has got their own history and anger and sadness and hurt. So, and we don't know if they took the class, right? We're taking the class, or I'm taking the class. So we have the skills, and believe it or not, even with just one person knowing these skills, you can have one of these great conversations. And in the spiritual practice to that is to create denials and affirmations. And what denials are you're not denying that you're afraid, you're not denying that you're scared, you're not denying that you're sad, but you're denying the power that those feelings have over you. So, okay, here I am, I'm getting ready to have this conversation, and I'm really scared, but that's okay. I'm still going to have the conversation because I deserve resolution. I deserve love. I'm lovable. So from there, I went to the Holy Spirit interpretation of the New Testament and found actual verses in the Bible that teach us how to have these conversations. I was blown away. I'm like, wow, what a book. Anyway, the first one is, what a book. Philippians 4, 1-6. Therefore, stand firm within your true desire, and you stand firm within the feelings of your heart. Do not be distracted. Be the love that you are, and the love that you are shall be known by you. Rejoice in the gratitude of yourself, and it is yourself that you shall see in all. So, as we come to these, knowing ourselves and loving ourselves, what are we going to get back? If we can come to a conversation, staying completely open, letting go of our story, right? Even if it's just for a moment. Letting go of our story, being present. Don't get distracted by our ego, right? Continue to stay in our heart in these conversations. And when we see ourselves in love, guess what? We're going to see other people in love. We're going to see the person across from us in love. Then we go to Ephesians 4, 25-8. You are part of the body of one. What you choose to receive in the mind and delivered by the Spirit back to you. So me and this other person are one. So if I see them as one and hold that in my brain, hold that in my heart, see them as love, see them creating a mutual purpose, creating mutual respect, that's what's going to come back to both me and them. Matthew 18:15. When you go to your brother, go with me, with a capital M, not me, Theresa, me, God. Check your heart to be sure you find forgiveness there. And also that you find trust, that the situation has been given to me, capital M. So go there with God in your heart. Go to your brother with God in your heart. Check to make sure that you find forgiveness before you even start. Before I even start. Clear your mind of judgments and desired outcomes. Let go of what you think the best result is, right? Because we all think we know it's right. I even think I know what's right for me. And guess what? I found out so many times that God has a better plan for me. When all is done, talk to your brother while being careful to listen for me in love and confidence. Listen for God in that other person talking. I was just blown away by this. In this way, there can be no loss, for the situation is no longer a situation of the world, but is a situation of heaven. So the situation is no longer from our ego. It's no longer from the material. It's all about me or you and connecting with that person across from you is just another expression of God. And being able to see that and be able to communicate that and allow that to create between the two of you. James 1:19. Be quick to listen to the true desires of the heart, and you are quick to realize the joy of your truth. Your truth is joy. So whenever you are not joyful, you are misunderstanding what you are. That's pretty powerful. Whenever I'm not joyful, I've forgotten who I am. So go back to my heart, go back to your heart to find out who you really are. In this way, there can be no loss, for the situation is no longer a situation of the world, but it is a situation of heaven. Be quick to listen. Oh no, I already read that one, sorry. Proverbs 12:16. A fool shows his annoyance at once, but a prudent man overlooks an insult. So go into these conversations knowing that your little wound is probably going to be poked, right? This person is probably going to poke the wound, because we create these situations in our lives so that we can heal these wounds, right? But because we've mastered our story, right? And because we know what triggers us, we're going to say, okay, I just got poked, but I'm going to breathe through it and know that I'm okay. Know that I see God in this other person. Know that I see God in love in myself, and be able to get to the other side of this. But expect the insult and overlook it. Philippians 2:4. Trust that you do not know yourself, because you have not observed that closely until now. Realize that your purpose is to ensure that your faith is placed with the motive you have chosen. What motive? What motive do you choose when you go into these conversations? Allow the motive to be love and forgiveness. And that's what will come back, and that's what you'll see, and that's what you'll create. Be clear on the purpose, and then observe yourself. What is it that you find yourself doing? Why are you doing it? And it comes back to us, because guess what, guys? We're the only ones we have control over. We cannot make somebody else do something that we want them to do. So we have to come to any conversation knowing ourselves and being able to have control over ourselves. In this action, evidence that your faith is placed with your motive. Or are you finding that you have placed your faith elsewhere? Be careful you do not judge that which you see and observe. See it as a learning device and nothing else. So if I go into this conversation and I see myself faltering from this, what I'm saying here, coming from that place of love, don't judge myself. It's a learning tool. Let me take that away and say, okay, this is another opportunity for me to learn and grow. And that's it. That's the bottom line. Luke 6:37, everything you see and experience through the filter of your mind. All this seeing is occurring through the ego mind, which does not see it all, it interprets. But the ego mind is not aware it interprets. It believes it knows. This is why ego minds seem to conflict. So what I had said before about our brain is there to protect us. That's what our brain does. So if we don't come from our heart, and here we are in this crucial conversation with someone, our brain is going to help us to see where we're not protected and but it's really, really about knowing that, using the filter of your mind and allowing your ego to, okay, my ego's there, but let me come from my heart. And finally, Romans. To love your brother is to love your truth. To care for him is to open your heart to the whole. And when your heart is open, wholeness is welcome. and in its welcoming, its truth is remembered. We are love. That is the bottom line. We are love, and that is the truth. And we can remember that. Now, the last part of my story is about this book. Does anybody read this book? The Little Soul in the Sun? What this little book is about is this little soul, this little being, this little light being wants to experience something special. And so he goes to God and says, I want to experience something special. And so God's like, well, what do you want to experience? He's like, I don't know. And he comes up with, he wants to experience forgiveness. And God says, well, in order to experience forgiveness, there's going to have to be somebody out there who's going to hurt you or do something to you that's going to hurt you. And he's like, oh, where are we going to find somebody who will do that? Because they're in this place where it's just light and all these light beings and all they want to do is love one another. So this little girl being comes up and says, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll come down to earth and I'll do something to hurt you. And he's like, really? You would really do that for me? Why would you lower your vibration so much that you would come down to earth and hurt me? And she said, because I love you. Because I love you. She said, you just have to promise me one thing. Promise me that as soon as I hurt you, you will forgive me. Because if you don't forgive me, I may forget who I am, and then you may forget who you are. And he says, oh, of course. You're such an angel. Thank you. And God says, that's all I send here is angels. So whenever we're in any of these conversations, they're just angels that are in our lives to help us come from our heart. Thank you.